and thank you all for joining us once again. Episode number 22 of the Clever Dummies Podcast. I am your host, as always, Lockie, joined once and again on this beautiful Tuesday evening by Nick. How are you going, my brother?
I am great, loving life as always because, you cannot love life enough, as they say. How are you going?
Yeah, that's right. Mate, I've read a couple of fortune cookies. Live, love, learn, and that's very, very key in this tumultuous life. But no, I'm doing absolutely outstanding, as you can imagine, mate. Still riding very much a high of what I'm sure is going to be a theme of this podcast and what really has been the theme of the large portion of my life. And that was the wedding that we had on Friday. Obviously, married my beautiful bride, Charlotte. And yeah, mate, I am absolutely charging. Went back to work on Monday, so no honeymoon yet. To continue to be had later on this year, but I'm doing excellent, mate. How are you, buddy? You've just started a new job, haven't you?
I have. I've definitely started a new job. It's been pretty good. It's my second week into this new job. But obviously I will get back to you on the update, on a proper update on the job. Let's say in the next episode or the following episode. So give me a couple more weeks before I can make a solid judgment as to what I have to say about my colleagues, and to decide
who are listening
to also
to
figure
this,
out if they're going to listen to
mindful.
this. That's exactly right.
That's right.
So,
and
topic
I did just skip
of the
ahead
pod.
all my talking points I had for tonight. I just skipped to the bottom one then. I don't know how I did that. Take us away.
Well, let's get to the elephant in the room, or should I say, there's no elephant in the room, but let's get to the main talking point, right? Which is, you got hitched, as they said, which is the name of this episode, by the way, just in case you're wondering.
You got hitched. No, that's very good. Like, Wedding Bells was maybe a good one. It is what it is. Is always a good one. But I feel like we can go to the well with that one. And what if we're not really sure? It is what it is, or fall in place. But yeah, no, that's a really good.
It
That's
is
a
what
good
it
heading.
is. Yeah.
So it was just excellent, man.
Let's
So I think maybe a recap might be the easiest way to segue. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, let's start with a recap. But before you do that, I have a couple of questions, and then you answer them, and then you go into the recap. I think it'll kind of give you a room to start off as well. All right. First question which is simple, and I already know the answer, but I still want you to say it. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really, really good. Feeling amazing. It's a question I've had asked a couple of times over the last few days. Like, do I feel any different? Like, how am I feeling? Obviously, first and foremost, I feel really good. Like, I feel excited. I still feel like I'm buzzing from the event. It was something that we've spoken about before, but it was, really a brainstorm that we've had since, my birthday in 2019 when I first proposed. But I think it wasn't until we attended a wedding expo at the golf course where when it first started to become reality that, like, we're actually getting married, we're doing the damn thing. And that was, July of 2019. So that's all June. So that's, the better part of 18 months, even longer than 18 months. So relief is definitely one. Leading up the week of in particular, but really the last few months was relatively stressful because you just want the day to be very, very good. So I think a big part of that kind of enjoyment is like relief. It's just like if you have a big report due or you've got some work that needs to be done and you've been working at it for so long, like I'm kind of riding the buzz off that. But the other part of the question that people wanted to know is like, does it feel any different? Like you're married now. How does it feel? And I think it does. And to my surprise, a lot of people were surprised by that. They've like maybe heard the opposite. They've had asked that question to other people. They've been told different things. But I mean, I just, maybe I was surprised a little bit. I wasn't really sure how I'd feel afterwards, but I feel amazing because I feel like, me and Charlotte have been together for nearly 7 years. So in terms of like the framework and the fabric of a relationship, not a lot really changes, but in my heart and in my soul and the love that I have for Charlotte has just grown and grown even more. And now that I'm officially married to her, it just feels like, it just feels amazing. It's actually really, I can't articulate exactly why. I actually don't want to really think too much about why it feels different, but it just does. It just feels like, it's just different, bro. Like it's just amazing.
Sorry, yeah, that was awesome. You know what? I was talking for 30 seconds there and I had my mic mute.
Oh no, that's all good. It is what it is. I was thinking,
It is what it
little
is.
footnote. We've gone back to the classic Zencaster. I was worried, but now continue on. We'll just slot that in,
Okay.
bro. Beautiful.
So,
It wouldn't be a podcast without
yeah,
it.
it wouldn't be a podcast, right? So, what I was going to say was when you said that, right? When you said I can't explain the why and I don't really want to explain the why, what I was going to say was there's this really brilliant book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why, right? And it's one of my all-time favorite books. And the book talks about um, our why as to do why we do things and why we feel things and why we feel certain way is closely linked to how our self identity and that area of brain that is in charge of feelings, right? And then giving you that decision making empowerment is the opposite side of the articulation or the speaking area of the brain. So there's a disconnect between us being able to explain our true intention slash our authenticity, because it's not possible. I just don't think humans are there yet. So it's pretty interesting. So normally when you can't explain something, it's because you truly are
Is it
that
like
in.
yeah, it's like a level of articulation that is so closely related to our emotions that we're not quite at that stage of um, like articulation of it, maybe.
Oh, 100%. It's like
Yeah.
it's like it's like you ask me, right? If you ask me to explain to you, and I'm not even a scientist. If you ask me to explain quantum mechanics to you, right, I'll give it a shot, right? And I will get pretty, probably not. That's a bad example, right?
Yeah,
If you ask
especially
me
if
to
you have an
explain to you,
edible.
right? If if you ask me to explain to you how Google's algorithms work, right, I will explain it to you with logic, right? But if you ask me to explain why am I friends with you, why have I been friends with you for you know 10 odd years, right? I will give you the reasons that any logical person would give you, but I couldn't tell you exactly why. What is it that keeps us so strongly bonded? And we've always tried to rationalize reasons, but it's never those reasons. It's something deeper than that. And I think that those articulation goes that is unarticulatable, if that's the word.
Yeah, no, that's a. I think that's a really good way to summarize it, and it's a good way to think about. What was the book again?
Start with Why by Simon Sinek.
Start with idea. I've heard of it. I will
Yeah,
look at it. I'll add it to my list for sure. And I think I kind of just had the epiphany a little bit in my own head. The big, one of the biggest things with marriage in the Christian faith is the bonding of two souls. So I think that we're in the spiritual process of now of both our souls coming together as one, which is kind of the what happens when two people get married and they commit themselves in that way. So I think that's probably what it is in my own mind as well, which is pretty amazing to think about too. That's why it feels amazing, and that's why it's hard to totally articulate it. I think as well because I don't have any prior experience to relate it to.
Well, that's exactly right, and I hope this will be your last experience, and I truly do hope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hope the next wedding is either you or Terrence, my friend.
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And look,
Or maybe Riaz if he
look.
keeps
So that
chucking
was the
away.
first
You never
question.
know.
Well,
Assad,
you
bro, it
never
could be
know. You
Assad. Who
never,
knows?
man. It could be a side. It could be anyone. That's the you
Yeah,
opened.
that's right.
Let's just say you went out. You opened up the betting. First drop, and now
Yeah,
you've got
that's
a
right.
whole team in front of you who can carry the game on. You said
Yeah,
you put
it's a
on a
fair
good
point.
74 on the you put on a good 74 on the scoreboard. From here,
Opening
it's all
stand. Yep,
sunshine and rainbows. So,
that's
you
right,
know,
baby.
how brilliant is a 74 score for an opening batsman? I just love that,
Ah,
like that 74 number.
yeah, especially off about 40 overs. He's just gone out there. He's
Yeah.
dug deep. He's got the shovel out a couple of times. He's faced the new ball off. He's got the boys in. And if you ever get a 74 in opening partnership, you've taken plenty of shine off the ball, and the hitters are going to come in and put 250, 300 on the board. So it's a great time, isn't
Oh,
it?
that's exactly right. You could obviously everyone's goal is to hit 100, but I think 74 is just It's just the money. It gives everyone a bit of a chance
Yeah,
as
well,
well,
that's
you
right.
know. So it's brilliant.
Mate, if your
All
average
right,
was
so that
74, you'd be the best specimen in the world. So it is what it is.
it is what it is. All right, so that was the first question, and with a little bit of a wrap around it. Now, another question, which is once again around the feeling, right? Explain. Well, you probably won't be able to explain, but I hope you can do your best. Explain the feeling. When your dad, in that sense, said, "Hey, we go. You may kiss the bride." The thing. So the
Yeah, yeah.
moment.
And then
Explain.
he gave it to my nephew, and he did. So, like, a bit of a backstory. I think I've touched on it before. Sorry, I'm just about to cough. So my dad, me and Charlotte asked my dad about 18 months ago, or yeah, about 18 months ago, to be the celebrant at the wedding. So essentially he did the service, he was the one that wrote all the formalities up and provided the service. You see the photos and you see him in the background. It was so amazing. And for it to be my dad, it just felt really great. And so because he wasn't a licensed celebrant, we officially got married the day before. A guy named Simon Joyce. Shout out to Simon Joyce. He's an amazing celebrant. He'd been doing it for 20 years, and he was a lovely dude. And he gave us like a little mini ceremony at our house, and it was really it was really beautiful. We had a small amount of family there, friends, and we officially got married. That was awesome. But I knew we decided the right thing that night because it's different when it's family, you know what I mean? And even though he would have done great and he's got a good personality, he's very good at his job, the fact that my dad was the one doing it was really amazing. And then when it was all wrapped up, we went through the process of the wedding, and when he finally said that, and I had Abby in my arm, and we kissed officially, I guess, as you know, as bride and groom for the first time. It was just like it was just pure euphoria, and it was just like it was just the most amazing feeling in the world. Think of like the best moment of your life, or one of the better moments of your life. It was like that, but it was all centered around love. So it was just really amazing, and the fact that obviously it was my dad who was doing it just made it 10 times more special.
Absolutely. It was obviously I was there for anyone who listening doesn't know
Mate,
that, and it
you're closer than
was
1.5 meters, I'll tell you that much.
I was definitely closer than 1.5 meters. I was it was just I'm good at anything that comes to emotional, mediating my emotions. I'm like, you know what? This is the
Yeah,
moment to like, stay in composure and look good and do all the fun stuff. But I was like, I was holding back a few tears. I'll tell you that they were not tears of they were tears of joy and just happiness.
and
I
love.
was
Yeah,
I love it. It was absolutely beautiful, and your vows were beautiful, right? But
thank you, buddy.
when
Oh,
Charlotte read out her vows, I was like, look,
yeah.
I love you, but
Yeah,
hers were just they gave me a tear and a
I'll
half.
tell you what, mate.
Uh,
I was the underdog coming into the reception speech, mate. I had to punch a fair way. She absolutely iced it, didn't she?
yes,
She did it.
she
Yeah.
did, she did, and then your speech. Now that was the one that gave me tears. I was like, oh, you were working the crowd, you're walking around, you're like, looking at people, making eye contact. I was like, this is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant. It doesn't get better than that.
Yeah, it
So
was
it was pretty
crazy
incredible.
because I knew kind of the framework of what I was going to say, but I was so nervous leading up. Like, I maybe had half a beer beforehand, and traditionally a lot of people get really drunk, whatever reason, they just want to feel happy, whatever it is. I knew I needed to stay relatively, if not completely sober, to feel the full extent of the emotions. And that went right the way through basically to the reception. And I ate some food, and I was like really nervous. I'm like, because I'm the type of person, if I don't say something well, like, I'll think about this for months, you know what I mean? I'll be dirty on myself. So that's what led to the nerves. And you obviously spoke amazingly, and I want to touch on that a little bit later, your thoughts about how your role and everything else. We'll get to that after. And also, my great mate Alex came out of nowhere and kind of shocked me. I didn't realize he was going to talk, even though that was afterwards. And my dad spoke really well. My sister did too. But I just was wanted to speak from the heart. And then as soon as I got up there and I started talking, and I'm like, oh, I'm in the groove. It's just like I've hit the first one out of the middle, and I felt like I could have gone all night. I had to like bob and weave. Like, I just felt so good, man. And I kind of feel like I in a really amazing sense, hey, like, I kind of figured out the solution to my anxiety that I have with public speaking, and that's the mindset that I have to get in order to speak in front of people. And once I realized that, I'm like, wow, I've just conquered like a really big fear of mine. So that was also really amazing too. And the big thing that I knew that I felt like I did well, obviously people told me I did well. That is what it is. Like you can take that how you like, but I can barely remember any of it. So I don't have nothing. The only time I remember anything is when I fucked up and I don't feel like I did anything wrong. So I'm super happy. Maybe I wish that someone recorded it, but also it's out in ether and it is what it is. So I was so proud of it. And yeah, it was
It
just
was
amazing.
brilliant.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. It's interesting
Oh,
because
quickly, I just wanted to touch on one thing before we move on, and that was the tears thing. Like, I was thinking about that today as well. Is like, for most of my life and most of our lives, like, tears have been closely associated with like negative things, like you got into trouble or something really traumatic happened. And that's why I feel like now as adults, we're very good at suppressing those emotions because we've had that experience with it. And like, I've had real difficulty crying in situations when I really wanted to. And I'm starting to realize that we can also cry for love and joy and excitement and happiness. And when that's what you want to cry over, it's actually a lot easier to release that blocker that you have up. When it's trauma, it's almost sometimes like what you want to do. When it's the other way around, think about that and just let it go. I feel like that would really help.
oh, 100% I agree. And I absolutely agree. And when I speak about, when I was saying, like, I truly, it's like I was like, there was a level of emotion that I couldn't explain in my words, like we talked about before, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
normally the closest thing I could link it to was crying, right? But in saying that, I was also so like um excited about for you, and like so in the moment that I didn't really, because if I it was almost like if it's hard to explain. In my head it makes sense, which was, if I started tearing up, I felt like I was going to spend more time being in woods than being, in the moment, you
yeah,
know if that makes sense. So I think that's why it felt more easy to be in the moment and focus on what's happening right now, and then
yeah,
all of you forget about the emotion very quickly,
yeah.
because I was like, okay, this is next thing is exciting, this is funny, and then
Yeah, that's right.
you don't want to
Because
lose.
you kind of you go into a little bit of like self-reflection mode when you cry sometimes, eh? Like it becomes very internalized and you kind of that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because soon as you cry, whenever you cry, there's a inner cinema going on, right? You see flashes of what we've been through and what's been happening, but that moment was way too good to have been having to be having flashes, or you know because yeah.
Yep, yep, yep.
So I think now it feels easier to cry about out of happiness than it did at that point. If that makes sense.
Totally, totally, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah,
And it's
but
maybe a little bit of rewiring for all of us there too, because I feel definitely that's the case for me also.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, look, overall, pretty brilliant. And I think I'm the same what you said about the speech I made. I wrote the whole speech out, and I think I
Yeah,
mentioned this to you before.
yeah,
I
yeah.
went so off script, like nothing. I just like, yeah, go on.
I think I understand why, and I think I might have even asked you, but what was your thought process behind that? Because and I'm sure you said mostly what you wanted to say, but like when you go into that sort of setting, why do you choose to speak from like your heart and mind instead of what you wrote down and prepared?
Well, it just seemed to it seemed like I did one similar story, similar to what I was saying before. If I was trying to read and trying to remember what I wrote, the funny thing is I had memorized the speech, but I just wanted to have the phone in front of me to say, oh, what was I going to talk about, right?
Yeah, so you
But then I
didn't get stuck up there, right?
didn't get as stuck up there. But
Yeah,
when I got up there, I had so much to say that I was like, well, there's no fucking point actually looking at what I wrote, because
yeah.
that was, now everything is
I feel
changed,
like
and
it's
like,
better.
yeah.
It's better if you can do that. And like some people, speech writing is good, especially if you're not comfortable talking in front of others. But if you feel like you can speak from the heart, always do it, eh? Like always do it, even if it's never as clean and tidy. I feel like when you're looking at words, like you're focusing more on how and what you're saying instead of just letting it go. And kind of letting go is like the big part of it too, right?
Well, that's exactly right. So that was it was pretty interesting, and it's interesting because when I started speaking at the beginning, I was like, you know what, this that, and obviously coming up with things. It's so interesting because having people there that I knew made it much more difficult to talk at the beginning. When I first grabbed the mic, obviously trying to MC, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Knowing
yeah,
that there were people that I knew made it much harder than talking in front of, like, I've talked in, like, for example, conferences or big meetings. It's always been easy because I don't really care about those people, if that makes sense, right?
yeah,
And
yes, yes,
when when I talk to those people, it's almost like I'm talking to the void, right? So
yeah.
I'm not really thinking of any of them. I'm just giving them what
So,
I think.
so how do you go with eye contact when you're speaking like in that setting?
On that, I'll pick a couple of people and I'll just look at them,
Yes,
or
yeah,
like I'll
okay,
I'll look around the room and I'll acknowledge them. And a lot of the time, I'm in way more control. So a small example of this,
yeah,
I gave a little presentation of this new implementation, the system we're going to implement today, right? And I was just looking at one of the person that I had in mind that I knew was gonna, that will benefit it from a lot. And so I said, hey, Jerry, their name wasn't Jerry, right? I was like,
Jerry
you,
Seinfeld.
yeah, Jerry, you have particular issue. We could work with that. That will work, wouldn't it? And then that person was like, yeah, absolutely. So it's much like in that sense it's much more uh power driven, versus in that sense it was all vulnerability because I knew everyone and I was there speaking on, like, almost on behalf of my best friend. So it was a lot more real. It wasn't about the things that I'm good at. It wasn't about, you know
Totally
it,
right, eh? Yeah.
totally, yeah. So
Mate, I've heard a rumor. Is this true? Have you been getting people at work to call you Jeff, as
Jeremy,
in
actually.
as in Jeff Bezos?
Yeah, bro. I've been pushing for it. Yeah, I've just said, yeah, call me Bezos. You're like, oh,
I,
Mr. Bezos.
yeah, another
Uh,
podcast the other day, but I think there's some serious digging we need to be done there. Anyway,
no,
moving on.
100%.
But like the eye contact thing was really weird for me because normally I like the eye contact because it is personal. There's also something too about looking directly at someone that you sometimes can get a little bit distracted and you forget what you're going to say. I guess the only thing for me is because I needed, I was like, I really had to be thinking about what I was saying because I didn't have it in front of me. I looked at people, but I didn't look directly at them, if that made sense. And maybe that's the only thing, takeaway negative, not negative, but the only thing I wish I did better is I was like specifically able to, like, man, if I could have done that thing again, I would have like, oh, anyway, it doesn't matter. I would have like specifically,
Well,
no, it's all right. It's all right.
well,
Doesn't
it doesn't work. Like, I mean, think about it. You've got what, 60, 70 people or 70 odd people in the room. How are you
yeah,
gonna, like, who are you gonna choose to look at anyway, right? So that makes it
yeah,
a little different. Who do you choose to give your eye contact to anyway? So it's easier to do. And that's what I was doing. The most to spend time that I spent looking at was you and Charlotte, more so, and then a couple of other people.
yeah.
Funny, just look around the room, maybe, a couple of people. So I looked at here and there, versus, trying to look at people and what their
At
reaction
everyone,
was. So
yeah.
yeah.
I will say when I said a couple of jokes that were like a little bit of a roll of the dice, there was a few people I looked at that I knew were going to laugh, and then that made me feel better. And then everyone laughed, so it was all good.
100%, I agree. It was
Those
fine.
few people
Yes.
that are just going to fucking crack up at the stupid shit you say. Good times, good times.
Look, there was a couple of delayed laughters on my jokes, and I was like,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Uh,
Uh,
it can happen when people don't know who you are exactly, and they're trying to kind of figure you out as well. Like you might have shook their hands before the ceremony, or they might actually be the first time they're ever hearing you speak. So they're trying to, like, and they know me outside of how we know each other, so they're trying to kind of figure that out. And like even one thing that Alex said, he like called me Littlefoot, and people, like, at first no one laughed. They're like, "Did you just say that?" And then I laughed really loud, and then everyone else laughed. So sometimes that's all that happens, but that's the thing with any type of telling or storytelling. Like, as long as the person that you're telling the story to and about understands, which I completely did, that's really all that matters. So that was I wouldn't worry anything about that at all. But
yeah, absolutely.
it's laughing is really, it's tricky. It's generally easier when people are emotional, but it's also like sometimes it's a roll of the dice too. But and this might be a good segue into a point I had, but that was just about like your role, not just as my best man, but also as the MC of the night, as the reception. Like I felt like you did such a good job, and I could totally see you being yourself up there, and that's exactly why we asked you and why I wanted you to do it. So I was like so proud of you the whole night. I just couldn't take my smile off my face. It was just so good.
Yeah, like I really truly enjoyed that. I mean, it works. It works for our dynamic as we are as people anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
and between the way we behave and whatnot, and then on top of that, you had the fact that like I was super excited and like yeah,
Yeah.
like it was just excited. Like I would have like I could not imagine being at your wedding and not doing that if that makes sense.
Yes, 100%.
Like
Eh? That's
and
the
it
funny part about it too. Is like even though we asked you, and it was like felt like an obvious choice for you, also it was like this is the perfect fit.
yeah, and like
Yeah,
only thing I would say and do is like I wish I did more if that makes sense. Like that's the only thing but I don't think like yeah as in like be part more of like organizing stuff as well. But then again I
yeah.
had to
It's
work like
difficult
but
when
that's
you're
yeah
living far away, and
yeah
yeah, it's one of those things too. And also like a little bit, especially the start of it, like kind of the structure of the night was a little bit up in the air. So you kind of had to roll with the punches the first few goes. So you were kind of like fighting an uphill battle, and then you broke through that and smashed it. So like that's it is what it is. It's totally
it
fine.
is what it
It
is.
is what it is, baby.
So
It is what it is.
we need to get that sound effect in here saying it is.
Oh, we do, we do. Yeah, and it's straight on your. It's already on your phone as your ringtone, which is pretty gangster as well. So
It
I mean,
really
it wouldn't
is.
be too hard, would it?
No, just give me a call every time you have to say something.
Oh, totally. That's
That's
another interesting thing that I was thinking about for the whole night. Like because I've been working at Bonneville for like 18 months. I was always concerned a little bit that because I was at work for the wedding, that I would feel like it would not feel the best because I was at work, right? But I'll tell you what it did make me feel like so effing comfortable. It's not even funny. Like I was so comfortable. Like I felt like I could go anywhere, obviously talk to anyone, walk anywhere. It actually was like the perfect scenario, weirdly enough,
yeah,
if that makes sense. Yeah.
that does make sense. I think there's a level of comfort that you get from a workplace because you
Yeah,
know it
and
so
I've done a
well.
few weddings as well. Like, I've been with the guys who have been serving and handing out food and pouring drinks and that sort of thing. So I think that really helped. That was like, it wasn't surprising, but on the day it felt like, wow, this is actually like perfect. And there was like golfers in the background that were playing, and there were members that knew me that were waving. And it was so cool. It was just the best day.
It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. It was pretty brilliant. It was a great night overall. Just yeah, absolute memorable. Um, nothing of that night was what is even
Yeah,
considered that you we should change or whatever.
totally. Yeah,
So
yeah. No,
yeah,
it was so
so it was
perfect.
just
What was
brilliant.
um what was your thoughts on like the whole venue and the setup and the way everything was, like the food and just the actual venue itself, how it all looked, and the golf course itself, like how friggin' beautiful was the thing, eh?
Oh, brilliant! Beyond my expectations. Like
Yeah.
I've been to a couple of weddings, and like the last wedding I went to was also on like a big property, right? But that property was, you can hire those properties and commiserate them to do the wedding, and everything is self managed, right? But having that staff, that professionalism, just gave it that edge of perfection.
Mm-hmm.
I really truly feel
Mm.
because you could commandeer the whole venue and then have that on a estate, right, which is great.
Yeah,
But just that edge of like having that little professionalism into it as well.
that's right.
People
Yeah.
be yeah. So it just it's just that little bit of crowd control, people's behavior control, because if we
They're at
know
a
it,
venue like
yeah,
that.
yeah. So it's brilliant, and on top of that, that little photography activity that was just phenomenal. That was so
That
much
was
fun. That
amazing.
was
Yeah.
yeah.
Shout out to Dan, who he said
So
he's
that
actually going to get the edits back to me this week, bro. That's like an 8 day turnover, man. Like, we'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll be 6 weeks, but like he reckons he's going to be able to do it within 2 weeks. Like, that's pretty amazing. The amount of photos he took, how well he did it, and the personality he was. And it was just, yeah, it was so good.
it was brilliant. It was brilliant. Well, I'll tell you what though, it may have been in the excitement of your wedding, but I did invite him to come join us on one of our episode of the podcast.
Did you?
So yeah,
Bro, 100%.
believe it.
He's got such a good personality. He
Yeah,
would do so
yeah.
well.
So I
He's really professional too, but also very fun. So yeah, he would. That's a good
yes,
idea.
I thought it was interesting because he was mentioning to me that he's tried starting a couple of podcasts but hasn't gotten
Okay.
past a couple of
Did he say
episodes. I
that
was
too?
like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I was like, you know what, brilliant, let's do it. Let's have a chat and let's see what we can do.
Jump
So
in. Yeah, that's totally
yeah,
right.
look, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, it was great. And those, running around in the golf buggies, golf carts, just so much fun.
Yeah, even though Gav nearly bloody destroyed one of them. So, but I guess to give a little context to it, basically after the ceremony, we got all the formalities of the ceremony done. We got all the post-wedding photos, and then with the photographer, the bridal party, so the three groomsmen, the three bridesmaids, and the bride and groom, we went out onto the golf course and got some really good action live shots. So we spent about 2 hours out there, which absolutely flew, right? Like, it was so crazy how quick that went. We went to the driving range. We went to a couple of holes that had and the thing about Bonneville, it's right in the foot of it's right in the middle of the mountains. So there's heaps of slope and undulation, like there's heaps of curvature on the course. So it's just like perfect for photo angles. So we would be standing in formation or in different spots. The photographer would be below or above us and would just get perfect background shots. I'm not exactly what that would be called, but like one of them has the Great Dividing Range, the mountain in the background. There's beautiful trees on course. So we just had so many great photos that are going to be taken, and I'm so excited to see them. And then we got to drive around in golf carts. They gave us food. We had like amazing like platter food, and we also had like drinks on there, which is the first real drinks we had of the day, and that was really cute too. And yeah, that was so much fun, wasn't it?
It really was. It really was. Just overall brilliant.
Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
I think that kind of wraps up the wedding talk. The wedding talk.
Yeah, we summarized that really well. I think so.
Yeah, that could be a whole podcast. The wedding talk.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Like I could break down, I could go timeline. We could talk about, the day, how we were like kind of rushing, but we even said it was meant to be this way because we had to be under a little bit of stress pressure.
Oh, you need that stress.
Yeah, that's 100% because it just gave that energy of the day and having all the boys
Oh,
around.
100%.
We went back to your apartment you guys stayed in, got ready there. So the whole day was just so good. And obviously seeing you guys, Terrence and Gavin, who I've seen recently, but seeing like Riaz and Tim and your brother, who I haven't seen for years, was just so amazing too. So big shout out to those boys who all contributed in their own ways of making it like such a good day. And yeah, it was really amazing. So if I could lead you into a little bit of an open question for you, and obviously we've spoken a little bit about your relationship status currently, just joking, but like, have you thought anything about what you would want your own wedding to look like, or did it bring up any emotions for you on that end?
Oh, 100%. Yes, absolutely. Agree. Once again, when Charlotte did her vows, I was like, but this is the single most beautiful thing I have witnessed in a very long time. And I've witnessed some beautiful things, I'll tell you that. Look, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, you know what, this is what love is, right? And I've always had a weird relationship with with love.
Did you just say relationship?
Yeah, weird relationship with love, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Like right, the idea of love, right? Weird relationship of idea of love, right? Because
Yeah.
I could never explain it, right? And there wasn't that much context around me that I seen to see what true love, what would be, right? So it was easier for me to just disbelieve and discredit love as it stands, right? Honestly, but I mean, over the years I've gotten better as a person as well,
In
right?
what way? Like, can you explain that? If don't have to go fully into it, but what do you mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, absolutely.
you would discredit it?
Yeah, and like I didn't think I didn't s- mm, the way love is explained, right? And then you've got the fairy tale love
And I
and
know
the
you're not
way.
trying to be a pessimist about it either. Like I know you're
Oh,
not
no,
trying
no,
to
no, yeah.
criticize. Yeah,
So
yeah,
the way love is always sold, right, in a capitalistic way, if that makes sense, right? You got the Disney version of love, you got the film version of love, right? That's the only really constructualization of love that me or most people have, right? If that makes sense, right? Me be I'm a highly optimistic person, right? However, I'm a pretty quick to see what things are and what things aren't. Like pretty good quick judge of what's true and what's not as well. So whenever I saw those films and the contextualization of love that people made out to be, I called it. I was like, you know what, this is bullshit, right? That's not how it works, right? You know, there's no happily ever after, right? Although this is what I said at in the speech, said, you know, and this is what I actually meant. I said those words. I said, I wish you your own happily ever after, your own, which is different, because it's very very often it's easy to define happily ever after as the Disney version of love, but love isn't like that, nor is relationships, nor is any two couple, or nor are any two other, you know, symbiotic relationship that people may be in, right? it, it's never so in sync, but you can work at those things. You can, you know, you can make those work, right? However, that's not the point, right? That's not trying to say how love works, but what I'm saying was, right, but hearing Charlotte say those vows, and you know, hearing you say those your vows, and holding your little baby, and I was like, okay, this is the most perfect contextualization of love as it stands. Because despite the trouble, despite the struggles, and despite the ups, and despite the downs, despite the thick and the sick, right? You you know, thick and the sick. When you know, this is what it really means to be, you know, to love someone, and that you stand here, and you know, to have for these big moments, and for what it means to, you know, yeah. So though I think that was a good contextualization for me. Construction. We'll learn to say that word one day,
Get
right?
back to us. No, I
Yeah.
totally hear what you're saying, because it's kind of seeing it gives you a little bit of a realization, and I think for a lot of people too who are might be worried or might think about like are waiting for their opportunity to come along. And the only thing I can say from my perspective is just how natural it all is. And I also realize how very blessed my situation is too in regards to Charlotte, but also even when we were up there, when Abby started crying during the ceremony, and it was like, oh, you know, do we grab her? Do we sort of do our own thing? It was everything was just so normal. It's just like, yeah, I don't have to worry. I'm so sure that this moment is so great that I had so much confidence. Yeah, let's grab Abby and put her up here. She might be a little loud or whatever else, but let's do it. And the whole night and the whole relationship has really been that. And I've not been worried about doing, you know, we're just so comfortable together. So from my perspective, it was just like just doing what felt right and what felt normal and what felt natural. And I think that's kind of a real key to a successful relationship is making it as natural. And that probably relates to the two becoming one, because you're so confident in what you believe is the right thing that you're both kind of on the same wavelength. So I think in our own way, we're kind of hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was really good for me, especially for, like I said, I'm not a pessimistic, right? In fact, I'm a highly optimistic person. In
100%,
fact,
yeah.
sometimes
Someone
too
who knows you
optimistic, right?
well, like 100%, yeah. And maybe
But
you come off that way, like people who don't understand you completely think that way, because you're very to the point, and you're not cold, but you are matter of fact a lot of the times, and like you say how you feel. And some people might see that as like you being harsh, and no, it's just you're just very truthful.
yeah, yeah, and that's how I hold. And you know, and over the last couple of months, and last after the pandemic, I've also been learning to not say as much when I don't need to, because over the years we all have those habits that I was like, you know, this is not serving me what I used to. I used to fill blank space, you know, with words, with
Yeah,
which I'm not doing anymore, because you know, that doesn't mean I'm not an optimistic person. I'm figured like I yeah. Anyway, I'm blabbering now, but the point is, I'm highly optimistic, but I just had no constructualization of love. But that does give me that solid, and that's a credit to you and Charlotte to say that's how much, you know. Obviously, that's a great impact on me, and I hope that was on other people as well. And I
yeah.
presume that's what weddings are in a sense, when this, you know, it also have to serve that purpose as well, which is
That's
beautiful.
what weddings are meant to be. One of my good friends up here, his name is Adam. He said that to us. Like, I've never been to a wedding that was so relaxed and calm, and there was so minimal stress. So the fact that that's what was conveyed was just beautiful. Do you little side point, but do you think like entrepreneurship is kind of the manifestation of like ultimate optimism, or like
Oh,
looking at
100%.
things? Yeah,
100%. It has to be, because you're trying to do something that doesn't exist yet, and you're hoping something would stick.
Yeah.
So, you know,
100%, 100%.
yeah.
Entrepreneurship is optimism. I reckon you
Oh,
should put
what?
that into a post and post that shit. Like, that is so perfect. That's a
Yeah,
slogan. Gary
I
Vee, if
will.
you're listening, mate,
Yeah,
get into it.
Gary Vee.
You're welcome. But,
uh,
yeah. And that's right. It is like accepting the risks and everything else and putting the pressure on your back because you want to manifest something that either has never been created before or you're building a path in your own life that doesn't exist. So you have to be extremely optimistic while also obviously being very realistic and being very business minded and practical. Like optimism and practical can exist in that symbiotic relationship. They don't have to exist
yeah,
outside
absolutely.
of it for sure.
There's a level of being unreasonable as well. I think
Yeah,
you have to be unreasonable, as in you can't be a person who is logically driven completely. You have to dot your I's and cross your T's, right? But you can't be reasonable at all. You have to do things that to anyone else will seem most unreasonable, because that's the only way that's the only way growth happens, right? Because
100%.
you have to be uncomfortable, unreasonable. Like a great example of it is, and this is funny enough, and this is something at your wedding, right? I realized obviously Tim was there, great Tim, right? And when Tim was there, right, he was he was fully involved in the wedding, right? But the good thing about Tim is, right, Tim doesn't drink, right?
Yeah,
And at no point he seemed like he wasn't enjoying being there, right?
yeah,
But
exactly.
also he didn't seem pressure to drink. He didn't. And he went to sleep when he needed to. He woke up, went for a run in the morning after a long drive. And
Yeah.
you know what I thought to myself, I
He
was
ran
like, that.
from Sawtell to Coffs Harbour Jetty and back all along the beach. Two things to take into consideration there. That's like a 20K back there and back trip. And also, or not there and back, but 20Ks round. And 80% of that is on sand. For anyone who's run on sand before, 20Ks is like like that's just ridiculous. And he
Yeah,
just did it on like a Friday morning or Saturday morning, after a wedding, 8 o'clock in the morning, like no care in the world. It's absolutely beautiful, right?
yeah, absolutely. And then I thought to myself, I was like, that's a person who is unreasonable to the T, because he normal rules and normal logic doesn't apply to him, right?
Yeah,
Because anyone else would go, well, you know what, I'm not going to do this. And I think that applies to not just like obviously to entrepreneurship, or whenever you're trying to push limits,
yeah.
because the whole essence of pushing limits is you have to defy the laws, whether it be of physics or of mental capacity, of human capacity, right? Or of business, and yeah,
Hundred
for
percent.
sure.
And I mean, he's definitely a guy that has read David Goggins' book "Can't Hurt Me," like without a
I think
doubt.
I'm pretty sure that's his Bible. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure he sleeps with that.
and
I'm
no,
pretty.
like you can't go too far wrong with that, mate. He's super inspirational and just a good person to be around, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I think,
shout out to him.
yeah, he's a brilliant person. Yeah, that's all I have to say for him. I think we'll move on to the next to
Most
the
definitely,
next.
most definitely. I guess, maybe your third time, your second time actually spending real quality time in Coffs Harbour. What are kind of your thoughts and feelings about the place and kind of getting like a good couple of days to explore a little bit and just kind of live the lifestyle for a few days?
I like Off Harbor. I really do. I think it's a pretty brilliant place. I think currently, with my life situation as it stands, I don't think I could. You know, well, currently because I have a job, so I couldn't, right,
Yeah,
live
well,
there.
I'm not trying to
But
convince you to move
yeah,
up,
no,
but
no, no.
hey,
But I was gonna tell you, right. However, the
I
way
definitely
I
am.
the way I planned my life to go, but nothing ever goes as planned, right?
Yeah,
Actually, my idea was that if I could live 6 months in that kind of area, a year,
yeah.
that would be pretty brilliant. Like I would really enjoy doing that. Like 6 months,
On and off, eh?
yeah,
Yep.
6 months on and off. Because I still want to spend some time, more time in the city, because meeting new people, and I do like the hush of the city time to time.
Most
Uh,
definitely,
you know,
I miss it a lot for sure.
I like that as well, and I like meeting people. I like talking to new people. I like going in big groups, and all those stuff. I like the cafes, and although there's brilliant cafes in this hotel, but I like those city corner cafes and those city stuff. But another thing that recently has happened, because I spent the past 3 years in Melbourne and my body has really climatized to Melbourne. Now that I'm moved back to Sydney, and when I was in Coast Harbour, I was dying of heat. Like I'm just struck. It's like everything, and right now it's
I mean,
in
and this is a bloke who was born and raised in Pakistan. Like literally in on the equator. Like that's pretty amazing, how the body adjusts like that.
it really is. It really is. And in like, so right now in Sydney, it's 19. Let me see what's the temperature, right? I think it's 19 degrees, right? And for me right now, I know everyone else in my family is wearing jumpers, and I'm like, this is the perfect temperature now. you know. So yeah, I think that 20 mark is starting to be ideal. But I think I'll adjust back to wanting the summer weather pretty soon. So
Yeah, well, that's right, and we're obviously entering the winter months now, and we've had the coldest, oh, sorry, the wettest summer that Coffs Harbour's really ever seen. So that was another kind of blessed thing that we had, was we had really good weather for the wedding too. But it is pretty crazy when you think about how the body adjusts in that way, and Sydney, I guess, it has a bit of both. Like it has the hot weather, but it's definitely not as cold as Melbourne, but we definitely can get some cold days down there.
yeah, 100%. 110% agreed there.
So your current and moving, kind of segueing back into the Sydney lifestyle a little bit. You're currently obviously just started a new job. You're living back with your parents. I think we've touched on a little bit, but maybe we haven't gone into it as much as we can or could have. How's that been like?
Yeah, it's been good. It's taking a minute to adjust back to. Actually, before I say that, there was one thing I want to finish up. When you asked me the earlier question as to we know your relationship status, I actually wanted to touch on that quickly, right? But
Do it.
because no, but I want to finish this first, right? I'm starting to feel like Alex Jones now. Listening.
Right,
uh,
man.
um, yeah, look, it's taking a bit of adjustment because I've been living out of home for almost 3 years or more than 3 years, and having, because I had so much space to myself, it's difficult having, uh, you know, having people around all the time. So I'm trying to adjust to that. I mean, it's nice to have people around, but I'm just still trying to adjust as to the way that works, and you know how everything goes. So that's the only thing that I would say that is a little, I'm still trying to get used to. But apart from that, it's great. I like it. I love it. Sydney's good to be back in Sydney. I do truly miss Melbourne, but it is what it is, right?
It is what it is. Yeah, you're at that point that I guess I guess it's a good thing too. Like you don't want to, and maybe the setting of moving from Sydney to Melbourne was a lot different to, or not the setting, but the situation behind moving from Sydney to Melbourne from backwards, vice versa, I should say, is different. So you're kind of at a position where you're like a little bit kind of like dealing with like, yeah, you're still kind of getting over the fact that you're not living in Melbourne anymore. So I think as time goes on, once that sort of starts to, you start to get it used to that, it'll feel more and more normal. And obviously, once you feel like you're in a situation where you will want to move out of home, I'm sure you would jump at the opportunity. But I think that's maybe one thing you can take from past experiences. You don't have to rush that sort of thing. Like it's got to be the right time. It's got to be with the right people, and it's just got to be in a place, particularly dealing with the structure of Sydney's traffic, that you've got to just take into consideration.
Oh, 110%. Yeah, yes. I don't know. Yes, that is Sydney traffic. I forgot how not horrible, but how crazy it was. It was just yeah. Sydney traffic is Sydney traffic.
It
So
is what
it
it
is. It is what it is. Yeah. So I'm gonna quickly going back on the touch what we talked about, right, in regards to this. But obviously, so currently I am single, right? So not in a particular stage of any relationship. However, in saying that, obviously being at a wedding and being around a couple who is getting married as well, it's a interesting. it's an interesting thought thought process that I do have now, that I'm having, which is, thinking, oh, maybe I do want to consider getting married. Not that I did not before, but it's just a recent thought that I've had because of being at a wedding recently. So I think which is fairly interesting. As they say, getting clucky, are you? So not getting clucky, but just a thought, I presume. And I'm sure everyone who was at the wedding or is normally attends wedding and goes, any logical and reasonable person would think to themselves and go, oh, maybe maybe I am, maybe I should consider and think about getting married and whatnot, the usual. So which I think is pretty interesting. However, obviously the fact the fact is, you can't go, hey, I want to get married, and then just someone shows up at your door tomorrow, because that's not how it works. However,
As much as Mama would love that to be the case.
as much as Mama would love that, she would go, just someone would show up at your door. That's not how it works. And the goal of marriage, and I think, obviously, I don't need to tell you this, but I think my point of view on marriage, or I think, is a bit of a partnership, right? In fact, it is a partnership, right? So you gotta, you can't marry someone, or you can't be with someone who you think is just hot, right? Because that's not going to last very long. You're going to get old, they're going to get old, and that will be the end of that.
Yeah.
However, what does last is, your, and you don't even have, there's another misconception to think that, you have to have a lot in common, right? I don't think that makes a difference either, right? I think what truly makes a difference is what your why, and, like, if your whys are intertwined, and what you see, the way you see the world, your point of view, and where you aim to be, is what, if you guys have that in sync, that's what makes a good relationship. But and that's what, I think that's a marriage that would last as well. But how it's hard to come to that conclusion. I mean, you could meet someone tomorrow and come to that conclusion very quickly, but on average, I would presume, and I think it's not as easy as just meeting the first person, and then they are in sync with where you want to be. Because, in true sense, if I was to describe someone that who I'd love to be with, would be the person who is the kind of person who wants to explore the world, and who wants to, you know, wake up every morning, and, you know, take on take responsibility, not for me or for themselves, but take on responsibility for the greater good, right? Someone who, is excited about life, someone who loves life, and all those things that I want, the way I see myself and the way I want to be. And I think those things are pretty important, for me at least.
Yeah, 100%. And it's the cliche, but when you meet that person, as you get to know them more and more, you realize it begins to make more and more sense that this is the person that I'm meant to spend the rest of my life with. And it might not be the one, if you will. There might be multiple ones, but I have no doubt, and I have complete and utter faith that you will find that person. You'll find that person, when you're least expecting it. And as long as you're on the right path, which you are in terms of working towards the better person that you want to be, and the best person you can be for them. As Charlotte just comes in the room and flashes me, shout out to Charlotte. Uh, you'll come in and be that person that they need you to be, and who you need them to be when the right time is. And that's why, like, manifestation is really important, because even though it's not happening right now, if we start to build towards that, it starts to fall in place. And you actually had two, and hopefully that makes sense. You had two really good points that I wanted to quickly go over and touch on. The first one being physical attraction, and that's really important, obviously, because you have to have that in order for the relationship to work. But it won't last longer than a few months, because just like anything, you get desensitized to it. So you obviously need to build more and more from there. And the second one being yeah, that's so true. And you don't have to have all that much in common. You just have to have a willingness to be open and explore what the other person has in common. And you don't have to love it. Like, Charlotte didn't always love coming to watch me play cricket, or she didn't love, at first going to the gym, even though she definitely did after a while. She didn't always love it straight away, but she had this willingness, realizing that I cared and loved about it. So she started to at least pretend to give a shit, and then eventually it manifested itself too. And then difference is also really great too, because no one really wants to, as much as you think so, you don't want to be, and I don't mean you, but we might have this conception that you want to be with that same person. Things get really bored and old really quickly. You need diversity, you need change, you need new experiences, and those are all also really important too. But like the willingness to travel, the willingness to explore new things, even if those things might not be what either one desires, I think is kind of another key ingredient as well. And ultimately, just the embedment and the prosperity of the other person is what's going to see you through. So once you sort of start to see those things manifest themselves, it'll be it'll happen very easily. So once that does happen, I'm so excited for when that does, because it's just going to be the best thing ever.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I appreciate that. Shout, thanks for that. But
No worries.
you're 100% correct. Just quickly, because I had another thought that I wanted to say as well. It's like in regards to attraction, right? Attraction definitely has to be there, like physical attraction. But sometimes it's like when you look at an Instagram post, because of course I have to make an analogy, right? Think of Instagram post. Sometimes you have to look
Social
at the
marketer, you.
yeah, you gotta look at the caption, what the caption holds, and not just what the image has, right? Because just like that image will very fade very quickly out of your memory, but that caption may just stick in your brain. And attraction, and like the physical appearance goes very quickly. I'm just saying, look at my pictures from Lokun's wedding. It looks like, I was Zayn Malik's, cousin, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
you were decked out
right?
and yeah, onto the golf course that day.
Yeah, right. Zayn Malik's cousin. But you look at me in real life. I'm just saying, just don't. Now I seem like Zayn Malik's ugly cousin. you know. So it's attraction is very situational. So physical appearance is very situational. But the appearance or the emotional attraction is, I think, is what leaves an imprint. That's all I had. There's one more thing that I want to say before you wrap up any of your ideas, and then that could probably set the tone for the next or the following episode.
Beautiful, beautiful. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so we all know that over the years, humans have has no. Before I say this, this has no context to anything we spoke about, right? It's just a thought that I've had all day, and I wanted to say something about it, right? Just like, so we all know humans have technologically advanced, right? And we have evolved and done technologically evolved and done all those things, right? We have computers, and moving forward we'll have neural links and all those kind of things that enhance us, to give us the capacity to be, in a sense, uh be free of silly things, whether it be like, constantly getting distracted, and not being interested, like, so technology is helping us do those things, right? And technology is advancing further, and I presume technology will get to the point where we will have a symbiotic relationship with it, where we are, in a sense, it does help us behave better, right? That's at least the hope, right? It could go completely sideways. However, right, and so that's our technological advancement, or if you will, technological evolution. However, I had this thought, right? What if there were two strands to the same evolution? Instead of a technological advancement slash evolution, there was a mystical slash more internal driven, um, like a, well, not like a mystical slash, like a soul driven evolution, that was possible for humans, but we completely missed the mark, where we didn't need the technology, right? Because where we didn't need any of the technology, where we were kind of like, if you think of the dolphins, right? How they're smart as shit, right? And they don't need houses, and they don't need those telephones or mobile phone, because they communicate via, literally with, through the ether, or practically speaking, via, what's the word, telekinesis, if you will. They don't, but what I'm saying
Yeah,
is it's a
yeah,
joke,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's all over the air, and they can communicate over hundreds of miles or kilometers, right? Don't quote me on it, but I know it's something crazy long distance, right? We couldn't even dream of communicating that far without a mobile phone or FaceTime. So I just
Oh, that's
wonder,
right. Like 5G is incomparable, right?
yeah, I just wonder, right? What as the human race completely missed the mark, and we just went down the complete wrong, the other side of evolution, what we could have had, of just, just being these beings who were being, but not necessarily too busy building these buildings and stuff, because all of this stuff becomes unnecessary if we are, all this stuff is only there is because we are ever so fragile, right? But if we weren't so fragile, like in a sense where we could talk to each other over hundreds of miles just by, by using the our vocal abilities or telekinesis and all the stuff. This is completely theoretical, obviously. I'm not quoting any paper. It's just a thought that I had, right?
Yeah, but if humans continue to evolve in a way that technology became that significant of a component of our lives, then the kind of the power that technology has in terms of communication and is like access of information would start to mold itself into our being. So that's like completely rational. Like that's
Yeah, yeah,
completely, even
yeah,
though it's theoretical. It's some of the smartest people in the world believe that's inevitable.
yeah. Absolutely. That's exactly right. So, if we never
Shout
created
out to Elon
technology,
Musk.
that's it. If we never created technology, right? If we never invented technology or the essence of technology or tools to help us, would we have evolved to be so mystically abled that we didn't need, external help, so to speak?
What do you
So,
mean by what's the context behind mystically abled?
well, so being able to communicate with someone long distantly, because it was a requirement of the requirement for humans to communicate, and people were moving around, our bodies adapted, just like how my body adapts to different temperature, adapted to develop the ability to communicate over long
Yeah.
distance, right?
Yep.
It
Yep.
just imagine that. I mean, this is complete bullshit, right? But think about it. Just imagine for a second, because we didn't have any phones, our bodies evolved and picked up the ability to communicate over long distance. This is a
Yeah.
small
I mean,
example.
what would if you took an iPad into the First World War? What would they call that?
Well,
Like
that's
the
exactly,
same
yeah,
thing, you know?
yeah, that's exactly right. So, or like, but would we need that iPad if we never invented technology or the
Well, that's
essence of
right.
technology?
That's a good point too.
That's a good, and then and then you got the idea of, let's say, we got cars, right? Or for example, we got cars or
Imagine
got
people back in them days trying to keep the iPad alive. They'd be blowing on it and trying to get it under fire. It's like it's gonna
literally,
die. The chargers
literally.
don't exist.
Do you know what's funny? There's a old story about the first time they had lanterns in the street lanterns before the street lamps came. Original street lamps. So apparently, when that came around, people were so shocked and so turned off the idea that they thought it was gonna kill everyone because they had light, and they thought people were gonna die because they couldn't handle the fact that there was little flames just around the street lighting it up at night. So this is just the contextualization of to like think how weird, different times have been. But yeah,
Totally, totally. And in regards to those concepts, I like to phrase in a way that I'm suspiciously optimistic. So I'm suspicious in the sense that throughout human history, whenever people have been given an opportunity to exploit power, they have done so.
yeah,
So if they ultimately get control of other people, then they're going to exploit that. But I'm also optimistic, one, because I believe that's the best way to live, but two, because there's been ebbs and flows of certain things, but the vast majority of times, the good has always won. So that's the optimism as well. So I choose not to be tied to one side of that argument. But I think, suspiciously optimistic is a good way in that. A good way to be in that regard, and I just hope and this is my own belief. I hope that once there is a line in regards to the merge of technology and human psyche, I hope that once a line is there, it isn't crossed, and there will be people that will cross that line. But I hope that we get to a point where once that line is there, we're all pretty aware of it, and we all decide to not take a step or take a step on our own choosing, and nothing like that's forced. And I guess that why, something like conspiracy theories for me, even though as I'm getting older, I'm starting to believe in the detriment far more than I am in the positive and upside of those sort of things. I believe still very fundamentally in the concept of there being a line and you also having to stick to that as well. That's certainly why I choose to be, suspiciously optimistic. But in the same sense, like how many things have happened recently and over time where we just didn't see them coming or happening either, and that's fuck it, let's do it. It is what it is. So
It is what it is.
as of right now, obviously the big story, predominantly the big story in the news and in regards to people's lives is the rolling out of the vaccines, right? And obviously, if you're a functioning human primate who can breathe and has two eyes, you understand and you know why vaccines are good because they provide defense, your immune system, a defense to fight off disease. The only thing that I'm concerned with is people's right to choose is being taken away. And there's obviously a difference between the right to choose to not kill someone, like murder. It's like, no, you shouldn't have the right to choose murder. Obviously, if you're going to murder someone, you murder someone. But also the right to have free will. That's the thing that I do not wish to lose. And that's the thing that sort of terrifies me a little bit. So even though there's plenty of people out there that jump to conclusions and they read one side of the narrative on both ends, I believe that we still need to exist in a society where we can learn and understand and accept people's opinions, even though they might differ. And so those lines are starting to get merged a very tiny bit. It's not enough. It's not enough at the moment to worry me. And I hope I know it. You know what I'm saying at the moment, even though I'm being very kind of vague about it, just because I don't actually know exactly how to articulate it. I just hope people are. I hope people are understanding of there's a line that we may potentially be crossing, and I just hope we don't cross that line. You know what I mean? It's kind of
Oh,
the beauty of the society we currently live in. As flawed as Western society is, its major positive is freedom.
it's society in general. I think one of the greatest thing, and every nation has fought for, has been freedom, regardless of what nation it was, whether it be Western society or India, Pakistan, or whatsoever. Right? They've been in the worst situation than they were, but they fought for that freedom. They chose freedom over being under control of tyrant, even if that was a better life. Right? So, freedom always now. I absolutely know what you're saying, right? Because first of all, I have a strong opinion about. I think most people are a bunch of eggs with their opinions are so invalid that they should be slapped on the face.
Yeah,
However,
you drop them once and
how
they crack.
yeah, you drop them once they crack, right? They have, like, I mean, they've got their opinions are equally as valuable as a freaking, a cardboard that's been recycled 54 times and now it's absolutely useless, right? The opinions are so freaking useless that you genuinely want to slap them on the face. And I could not. However, everyone has the right to have their opinion and the ability to choose. That is the fundamental human thing, right? You have the
Most
ability to
definitely, yeah,
choose,
most
right?
definitely.
So if when you talk about vaccine, right, whether you choose to get the vaccine or not, that's completely up to you. I'm not saying to you, Lachlan, as I'm saying anyone, right?
Yes,
Completely up
yep,
to you,
yep,
and
yep.
you should have the ability to choose that, as long as that's not impacting either me and the other people, right? Long as your ability to choose is not impacting other people, that's fine. So that's when it comes into like murder and whatnot, right? However, because if you're like, obviously we're not specialists on this, right? But right, just
Yeah,
just
we're
as a
not
theoretic.
epidemiologists. We're not
Yeah,
we're not statistics experts.
yeah,
We're not healthcare professionals. We're none of those things.
yeah,
Obviously,
just as an idea, right?
we're
Talking
just
about
critical
COVID.
thinkers,
Yeah, just as talking about COVID-19,
clever
right? If
dummies,
you
if you will.
Clever Dummies, right? Talking about the old, our old mate 19, right?
Yeah, or
all
how I
made,
articulated it, 18
yeah.
plus 1.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that.
That was
Our
good, eh?
all, yeah, our all made 18 plus one, right? It's when you think about that, right? So if there's a 30, 10 to 15% of people who don't want to get the vaccine, and that's their choice, as long as that's not gonna inhibit the ability of me and another person or another person to move around freely, which from what they're saying it seems like it won't, because they probably won't will never vaccine everyone, because that just doesn't happen,
Yep.
because there's probably some dude named Jazal who lives in buttfuck nowhere. Good luck
Yeah.
trying to find him and trying to vaccine him, right? So you probably never. So as long as it doesn't impact me, and that's fine. So they should have that ability to choose. However, and I presume in that vaccine sense, I think a mass majority would go, I want to get the vaccine. However, it should be a voluntary choice that you're putting into your body. Um, yeah, I
That's right,
think
and the other kind of aisle of the argument of the other side of the aisle, and the one that I totally subscribe and agree to, is like, sure, as of right now, we're doing really well with this thing, and things seem to go back to normal. But once we allow international travel, and once we allow this thing to get rolling again, like there is a potential that it will start to spread again. And it's like, okay, what's the risk factors for everyone? And um, we now know that like what's the risk factors for everyone, and we now know that the government's choice in fighting this thing is, one, either get everyone vaccinated, or two, shutting things down. So what are people willing to sacrifice in order to do that sort of thing? So um I just think it's and I certainly believe that that's why I can totally understand the idea that the best way to get on top of this thing is to vaccinate everyone, because obviously this thing will spread again when everything opens up, because it's just what it is. It's highly infectious and it's out there. You know what I mean? It's kind of just from there, how dangerous is this thing actually really? And I think asking that question has become vilified in a sense, and that's maybe where I'm starting to get a little bit concerned. But also, I do realize that it's just something like anything. Like if you give a dog a toy, this is a pretty good example. No, I'll make it a human thing. If you give a baby a toy that she's never seen before, she's going to go, what the heck is this? As she starts to get used to it, and she starts to understand the sounds it makes, and the surface it has, she'll start to learn how to manipulate it and move it, and then she'll start to figure it out. I think where it's still in that infancy stage, obviously, with this thing that we are right now. So things that previously were irrational right now are rational, because we just don't know what's going on. So I have empathy, and I'm deploying empathy. Shout out to Gary V. I'm deploying empathy on both sides of the situation, because I understand both perspectives, and I think that's one thing that we need to all try to do, is to try to see both sides of the aisle, if you will.
100% agreed. 100% agreed. Anyway, I think that's a good note to wrap up the podcast, although we
Yeah.
went in a completely different direction, and I
Nah,
know we could go.
totally, but I think we did that really well, and might have added another 15 minutes or so. But I'm actually really excited to hear the whole podcast. Like, I'm going to re-listen to this whole podcast, but that last little bit I think was really like, and this is just us talking out loud, but I felt like that was
Yeah,
really well done on both our ends. So no, that was beautiful, bro. And I guess yeah, we'll wrap it up here. We're just going over an hour and 10 minutes now. This is kind of the length we like to do. We obviously had the wedding, which is amazing, and so many great things that have come out of that. um, hashtag best episode ever. But no, this is really good, bro. And we'll continue to recommit to this thing weekly. Certainly, that's one thing I really want to do on my end. And this has just been such a great episode, and we've just gone over so many things. Our flow today has been so good. I really hope that everyone who's listened to it has enjoyed it. Episode number 22, of course. And moving forward, we're just going to keep going deeper and deeper, and we're just going to keep critical thinking. So maybe if you want to give us a little social media plug, and then you can just say goodbye. And I think that's just about it.